vault door groans open. Inside, bars of gold sit in silence, untouched, gleaming, perfect. They look eternal, indestructible, safe. But what if that shine is a lie? What if this metal, the one humans have killed for, worshipped and built civilizations around, is not a symbol of stability, but of illusion? Because history shows us something uncomfortable. Every empire that trusted gold to save it was eventually destroyed by it. This is the gold illusion. Long before the modern economy, before credit cards, before central banks, the world ran on stories, not systems. And gold was the most powerful story of all. In the sands of Egypt, gold glistened like captured sunlight. The pharaohs called it the flesh of the gods. It adorned tombs, crowns and temples. Not because it was useful, but because it was eternal. Centuries later, in ancient Lydia, King Croesus minted the world's first standardized coins. For the first time, gold wasn't just decoration. It became trust in physical form. When Rome rose, it mastered the art of monetizing that belief. The aureus, a small golden coin, stamped with Caesar's face, travelled further than his legions. But when the emperor grew greedy, they diluted their coins with cheaper metals. Each new ruler tried to stretch the empire's wealth, and every time the people lost a little more faith. By the 3rd century, the Roman economy collapsed under its own deceit. The currency that had once conquered the world became worthless scrap. The lesson was written in stone. When trust fades, even gold cannot save an empire. The Middle Ages turned gold into legend. Alchemists locked themselves away in candlelit rooms, chasing eternity in metal. Kings financed wars to seize it. Merchants crossed oceans to find it, and priests declared it divine to control it. Gold wasn't just a currency anymore. It was faith. Faith that could be mined, melted and moulded into power. But that faith would soon become an obsession. Then came the 16th century, the dawn of Europe's golden age. The empire where the sun never set. Its ships returned from the New World, overflowing with gold and silver. Galleons gleamed like floating treasure vaults. Kings praised God for blessing them with endless wealth. But every coin carried a curse. For every ounce of gold Spain gained, 1,000 lives were lost. Mines in the New World bled with human suffering. And as the gold poured in, prices across Europe began to rise. Bread doubled, wages froze, the poor starved. The empire that ruled the world was eating itself alive. Historians call it the price revolution, the first great inflation crisis, a warning that wealth without value is rot disguised as gold. Spain's rulers never understood it. They kept importing, spending, celebrating, but the more gold they had, the less it was worth. The empire built on treasure was sinking into poverty. It was the world's first economic illusion and the foundation of every financial bubble that came after. Gold was meant to save them, but instead it exposed them. As the centuries passed, commerce grew faster than conquest. Trade connected continents and ambition outgrew the weight of metal. Gold was powerful, but it was heavy, too slow for a world that wanted speed. In 17th century London, merchants found a new idea. They would store their gold in vaults and trade the promise instead. Those promises were paper, light, simple and dangerous. Each note was a pledge. Pay the bearer in gold. But few ever asked for the gold back. Trust became a currency of its own. Banks rose from that trust. The Bank of England, born in 1694, turned paper into power. Governments realised a secret too tempting to ignore. You could print more promises than you had the gold to back them. As long as people believed, the illusion held. The 19th century called it the gold standard, a global system built on faith in paper and the myth of metal. Every major currency was tied to gold: the pound, the franc, the dollar. The world believed it had found perfection. But perfection is fragile, and faith is a dangerous foundation. When panic spread, people rushed to exchange their paper for metal. Vaults emptied, banks broke, governments begged for time. The illusion was still alive, but it was bleeding. Paper had freed the world from the weight of gold, but it chained it to belief. And belief is easier to print than truth. Then came the 20th century, the age of industry, empire, and war. For generations, gold had been the anchor of civilization, but every anchor eventually breaks. In 1914, the world went to war, and with it, the gold standard shattered. Nations needed steel, oil, and blood, not metal. They printed money to fund the slaughter, and when the guns finally fell silent, their currencies were ghosts of what they once were. They tried to return to gold, but gold no longer fit the world they had created. Governments strangled their economies, trying to defend the illusion of stability. Factories closed, workers starved, trust vanished. And then in 1929, it all came crashing down. Banks collapsed. Families lost everything. Crowds stood still outside vaults that no longer held the gold that they had been promised. Faith in money died that year. In America, President Franklin D. Roosevelt took the unthinkable step. He made it illegal for citizens to own most forms of gold. People handed over their coins and bars in exchange for paper. Promises for metal they would never see again. Gold, for the first time in modern history, belonged not to the people, but to the state. After the Second World War, the world built a new illusion. At Bretton Woods in 1944, leaders created a system to restore order. The US dollar would become the world's anchor, and every other currency would tie itself to it. And behind that dollar stood gold. For 25 years, the illusion held. America had the gold, the world had faith. Trade flourished, empires rebuilt. But the numbers stopped adding up. The US was printing dollars faster than it could mine gold. Wars, welfare, the cost of empire, and countries began to notice. France demanded its gold back. Shiploads of bullion crossed the Atlantic. The vaults in New York began to empty. And then in August 1971, President Richard Nixon appeared on television. He smiled, and he killed the gold standard. Money would no longer be tied to metal, only to belief. That night, the illusion ended. Since that night in 1971, the world has lived without a tether. No metal, no anchor, just belief. Money became an idea, a story we all had agreed to believe. Central banks learned a new magic trick. They could create wealth with a keystroke. Trillions, born from nothing. The world called it growth, but it was debt wearing a halo. Banks lent what they didn't have, governments spent what they couldn't earn, and investors called it prosperity. For a while, it worked. Skyscrapers rose, markets soared, confidence returned, but the illusion had simply changed form. In 2008, the system cracked again. The paper gods stumbled. Banks collapsed, markets froze, governments panicked. And to save the illusion, they printed more. Quantitative easing, stimulus, relief. Different names for the same old faith. Today, trillions of digital dollars flow through the system no one can touch or see. Money exists as code, as light, as belief in screens. Gold no longer rules the world, but its shadow will never leave us. Governments still hoard it in vaults deep underground. Investors still run to it when fear returns. Because deep down, we remember what happens when trust disappears. Gold was never just money, it was memory. a reminder of how fragile our belief has always been. We didn't escape the illusion, we perfected it. Paper became code, debt became faith, and faith became the world's currency. Every empire, every dynasty, every civilization was built on belief. Gold just gave that belief a shape. Rome fell, Spain drowned, Britain faded, and one day America will too. Because no empire collapses from weakness. They fall from confidence, from arrogance, from forgetting that every system is temporary. Gold didn't betray them, it reflected them. Their greed, their hunger for permanence, their fear for losing control. Gold was never salvation, it was a mirror. And in that reflection, we see ourselves. We chase wealth, just as they did. We call it progress. But progress too is an illusion, one we keep printing. Because deep down, we still crave what they craved, certainty, power, or immortality. But nothing lasts, not empires, not currencies, not even gold. History doesn't repeat, it just changes currency.